You're not going to like my answer. You're not going to like my answer. No, it probably won't. Unfortunately, it won't. I mean, what you're really asking isn't if America will collapse. The American people will be just fine. People are pretty resilient. In fact, particularly Americans. Americans may be a lot of things, but they are resilient. This is a true compliment that I'm actually paying to my fellow Americans on this one. It's rare, but I do it occasionally. And Americans are extremely resilient people. For real. I mean, like, if you look, there's a great movie called Ballot of Buster Scruggs. And I think I think everybody should watch it. It's worth actually, giving Netflix, a couple of bucks to watch it, just because it actually does a really good job of explaining just the kind of stock that Americans are actually made up of. And people went through utter hell, to be here and to evolve to where we got to. It's remarkable. It's incredible. It's nothing short of insane how resilient Americans actually are. And it's the reason why Americans are hated so roundly by the ruling class of all over the world. Right? The ruling classes hate Americans. That's why they've been trying to get rid of us. That's why they're trying to replace us. And it's because of that. They do not like that resilience. They really don't like the idea that Americans could actually become resilient enough to get past all this, get the dollar to collapse, come back from that, and then start having a bunch of kids. They really don't want that. That's why they pull out all the stops. That's why they have all the propagandists, all the socialist media people hyping, don't have kids, never have kids. The people are paid to say that shit. That's the truth. I mean, in the meantime, you've got, Monkey Boy on his 14th fucking kid or something like that. And no disrespect. I mean, he's doing pretty much what he's doing. If I'm being honest, he's doing pretty much what I would do. Probably not quite the same way, actually, that he's doing it. But I mean, it's like, yeah, if I had that kind of money, absolutely. I mean, dude, I'd have all kinds of kids. And not because I'm a great father. I mean, I suck as a dad. Ask anybody. I'm not a very good dad. I'm barely a decent human being. But, at the same time, I mean, I do think that I can get a couple of things right occasionally, and just telling kids, hey, why don't you just be honest and just here's what it's like to actually care about other people. That's it. I think you can screw everything else up if you can get that right. Just my opinion, anyway. But you're not talking about whether America will collapse. You're talking about whether the dollar will collapse. There's two different things. Again, Americans will be just fine. People will be just fine. They'll be pissed off. They'll be all angry and butthurt because they lost billions and billions of dollars in their fake stock market, their fake real estate holdings, and all this other bullshit. But what would be disappearing is not wealth. It's the illusion of wealth that would be disappearing, and it's not without precedent. It happened in the late 1700s in the U.S. when the continental dollar collapsed. People thought they were rich, and they really weren't. It's how it is. I mean, there's an entire movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. It's fucking explained in plain goddamn English by the McConaughey character. Everybody flips McConaughey shit, but he's a good actor, and that character does a great job of explaining the reality that, dude, you never want people to take money out of the markets and do anything with it, because then it becomes real. No, just always keep people propping it up. That's it. So it's not really money. It's sort of like, you put a $10 bet down on roulette on a number and you win, 35-1, and you let it ride and you win again and you let it ride and you win it, and then you finally lose out and well, how much did you lose? $10. That's what you lost. You didn't lose $2 million. You lost $10. But that's not how gambling degenerates see it. I mean, it's really the truth. I mean, and if you want me to be completely honest, since I've given Americans a great compliment there, let me also, follow it up with an insult. Well, not an insult, but a truism. Most of you are a bunch of fucking gambling degenerates. It's the truth. And it doesn't make any difference where you are in the socioeconomic hierarchy. It makes no difference. Bunch of you are a bunch of fucking. There's all these people that say the lotteries are just it's just to take advantage of poor people and stupid people. And so are those airport Marriott scams that you all go to learn to get rich in real estate. All you're doing is just propping this shit up beyond the markets. I just did a video on that, so it's fresh in my mind. But that's the kind of shit that people do. You know, everybody has this delusion that they want to keep going rather than do any of the actual work. In a hard money economy, a real hard money economy, the people who do the work make all the fucking money. That's just reality. That's why it's hated by the elites, or the so-called the oligarchs, the ruling class. That's why they hate that idea. They hate the idea of gold or any kind of hard currency for that matter. Orange internet money in particular, they hate it. Because if you actually had a currency like that, the people who do all the fucking work make all the fucking money. That's because math. Because math. And I've done equation after equation after equation, and I've showed this to people hundreds of times. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% will go to the 20% people who do all the fucking work in this world. Not just the country, but in this world, everywhere. That's just how it is. So, to answer your next question, which is what happens to other poor countries like Ethiopia or something, they'll actually be better off. For real. They won't have the U.S. the U.S. dollar draining their resources through inflation. Remember, the chief export for the U.S., the top exports for the U.S. is cheap dollars, bad political advice, and war. Like that's and lawyers to a lesser extent. But I mean, like those are our chief exports, and they're shitty exports too. So, yeah, I mean, like that's just it, and that's what all the fighting and conflict is usually about. Is trying to prop up this fake currency, the USD. Just so. The poorer countries will be just fine. Once again, I think that many of them I think many countries are plenty resilient. And nowadays, with the advent of the internet, what is a poor country now? I'm not talking about the countries that where like 90% of people have cell phones, but only 50% of people have toilets. You guys need to do stuff about that. That's bad. So, don't let the iPhone distract you. You probably need to like put in toilets and septic and shit like that, right? It's fucking important, okay? And I say that just like. I'm not joking. Like, I know people are going to take it as a joke, but I'm being dead serious. Like, those infrastructure is pretty fucking important. Okay, it is. It's pretty goddamn important. But those poorer countries, if they're not getting hounded with inflation, if the IMF and World Bank aren't lending them money, dollars specifically, then they're not having to pay interest. And if they don't have to pay interest, then that means that those countries aren't as fucked. So. That's it. And if the U.S. Empire, which is the dollar, it's again, remember, most Americans are not involved in any of that shit. Vast majority. I'm saying this for like my international people, that like, no, the vast majority of Americans are trying to figure out how to fucking survive right now. They're doing everything they can to stay afloat. They're like right here. Most Americans they're kind of treading water right now. And that's why there's the delusion. That's why they're all hoping that the Orange Man and Monkey Boy are going to save them somehow. I mean, it's too much law and order, both of them. Like it's too much law and order, and they're too busy trying to protect their status in the world and on the world stage than they are worried about the American people. I call it like I see it, and I watch their actions. I don't give a shit what they say on Twitter. I don't give a shit what they say on on the media and everything. Like whatever. I watch their actions. And like the reality is if the Orange administration wanted all the illegals gone, they could have them gone in about 30 days. 30 days is all it would take. True story. If they really wanted them gone, because that would actually help the American people. That really would help the American people, because then the wages would either wages come up or prices come down. One or the other, or somewhere in the middle. They meet somewhere in the middle is probably more realistic what would actually happen in an open market. But yeah, that's what would end up being the case, and that's not very profitable to the fake billionaires out there. So no, these guys aren't going to do any of that shit. And by the way, to answer your question, in case anybody's wondering, for anybody who sticks around this long, because like fucking nobody stays this long, or hardly anybody, I should say. Some of you do, but most people don't. But how would you solve it in about 30 days? Letters of marque and reprisal. You give all the illegals 30-day head start and say, listen, you get out of the country, otherwise we're putting a bounty. It's Article 1, Section 8, the U.S. Constitution, letters of marque and reprisal, and any American can collect it. So, like, I mean, you if you want to stick around, like, for real, it's like fuck around and find out. Because there's a lot of really pissed off Americans who could use some money, and if all they got to do is bring you in warm or cold to get paid, a lot of Americans need the money.